China's robots are beating humans on ice, and that's just the beginning of what should concern you. In 12 months, Chinese robot running speed improved by over 200%. You heard that right, 200% in a single year. That's not a software update. That's the difference between your grandfather's car and a Formula One racer, achieved in the time it takes to go through one winter. 4 stories are about to prove this isn't a coincidence, it's a strategy. The robot that should not exist. Picture this. You're scrolling through your feed, half asleep, when a video stops you cold. A humanoid robot, gleaming white, standing about 4.5 feet tall, rolls onto an ice rink on skates, not being pushed, not being guided by a handler. It glides forward, shifts its weight, and then does something that makes you sit up straight. It lands a front flip, on ice, with the kind of controlled, centered landing that takes human figure skaters years of daily practice to achieve. Your first instinct is that it's fake, CGI, some clever editing trick. But then you notice the lighting, the imperfect reflection of the rink, the slight spray of ice chips at the landing. This is real footage, and the machine doing it isn't a classified military prototype or a $100 million research experiment locked away in a government lab. It's the Unitree G1, a commercially available humanoid robot that you can order right now for $17,990, less than a mid-range luxury car. And here is the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Not the skating, not even the front flip, but what's behind it. That robot did not learn to skate the way you learned to ride a bike. It didn't fall 100 times. It didn't slowly find its balance over weeks of practice. It was trained in a virtual physics simulation, running millions of attempts in a matter of hours, until the algorithm was perfected. Then, that perfected algorithm was uploaded to the physical robot and to every other identical G1 unit on Earth, simultaneously. One robot masters a skill. Every robot on the planet has it by the end of the day. That single detail turns a viral skating video into something far more significant. Because if this is what China's robots can do for fun, you need to know what they're doing when the cameras aren't pointed at an ice rink. And that story starts with a race, the method that changes everything. Before you move on to the race, you need to understand how the skating happened, because the skating itself isn't the breakthrough. The breakthrough is the method behind it, and once you understand it, every story that follows hits completely differently. It's called sim-to-real transfer learning, and the name is exactly what it sounds like. Instead of putting a robot on ice and letting it stumble through thousands of painful, hardware-damaging falls, engineers build a virtual replica of the physical world, a simulated environment with accurate gravity, friction, weight distribution, and momentum, and they run the robot through the challenge. Inside that simulation, millions of attempts, millions of failures, millions of micro-corrections, all happening faster than real time, compressed into hours instead of months. The simulation doesn't just run the robot through the same fall over and over. It randomizes conditions. It introduces variables, different ice textures, different speeds, different angles of approach. It forces the algorithm to find solutions that work across a whole range of situations, not just one perfect controlled scenario. By the time the algorithm is transferred to the physical robot, it has already encountered more edge cases than a human athlete would face in a lifetime of training. Think about what that means for a moment. You spend years learning to drive. You accumulate thousands of hours of road experience. And that experience exists only in your nervous system. You cannot hand it to anyone else. Your skill dies with you. Now imagine if every hour you spent driving made every other driver on Earth slightly better. That is functionally what Sim2Real does for robots. The learning scales. The hardware doesn't need to. But here's the part that should keep you up at night. This methodology isn't just being applied to party tricks on ice rinks. Chinese robotics companies are running sim-to-real training pipelines on every physical challenge they want their robots to master. Walking on rubble, climbing stairs, lifting irregular objects, navigating crowds. Each capability gets the same treatment, millions of simulated attempts, a perfected algorithm, a simultaneous global upload. The skating video is the most visually striking proof that this method works, but it is nowhere near the most consequential demonstration of it. Because while the world was watching a robot do a front flip on ice, another Chinese robot was quietly doing something that put a very different kind of number on the board. One that made even seasoned robotics engineers stop and check the math twice. The race that rewrote the record books. April 2025, Beijing. A half marathon, 13.1 miles of open road, real pavement, real weather, real race conditions. And registered among the human runners. A field of humanoid robots, not on a closed track, not on a smooth indoor surface, on the same course, under the same rules, in the same race. Honor's Lightning robot crossed the finish line in 50 minutes and 26 seconds. Let that number sit for a second. The human world record for a half marathon set by the best conditioned, most elite human athlete on the planet, running at the absolute ceiling of what human biology can produce, stands at around 57 minutes. The Lightning didn't just finish the race. It beat the human world record by over 6 minutes. You heard that right, a robot beat the best time a human being has ever run that distance, on a public road course, in an open competition. But that's not even the number that should make your jaw drop. Here's the one that matters more. 1 year earlier, Chinese humanoid robots were running the same distance in 2 hours and 40 minutes. In 12 months, one single development cycle robot running speed improved by over 200%. That is not incremental progress. That is not the kind of improvement you see from better software patches and minor hardware tweaks. That is a trajectory that suggests the ceiling is nowhere near in sight. To put that in terms you can feel, imagine a runner who finishes a half marathon in 2 hours and 40 minutes in 2024. Slow, struggling, barely competitive with casual joggers. Now imagine that same runner, 1 year later, is the fastest half marathoner in human history. That is the improvement curve Chinese Robotics just posted in public. Now, here's where you need to stay honest with yourself, because this story deserves accuracy. Not everything went perfectly that day. Several robots stumbled mid-race. Some required assistance from handlers. Only 38% of the competing robots finished fully autonomously without any human intervention. Rodney Brooks, the MIT roboticist who helped build the foundations of modern mobile robotics and has been skeptical of humanoid robot hype for years, looked at events like this and called them publicity stunts. And he's not entirely wrong about the gap between demonstration and deployment. But here's the tension that Brooks' framing doesn't resolve. You don't judge a trajectory by its stumbles. You judge it by its direction and its speed. A robot that needed help finishing a race in April 2025 is already a previous generation of hardware. The engineers who built these robots don't celebrate their wins. They document their failures and get back to work. The teams that stumbled went back to their simulation pipelines, fed in the failure data, and are already running the next iteration. And here is what makes the marathon genuinely alarming beyond the athletics. Endurance, balance on variable surfaces, thermal management across sustained exertion. These are exactly the capabilities that determine whether a robot can work a full shift in a factory, navigate a logistics warehouse, or operate reliably in an environment that doesn't stay clean and predictable. The race wasn't about running. It was about proving the robots could work. But if the marathon was a stress test of endurance, what China built next was a stress test of something far more violent, and they were completely open about why. The fight club nobody saw coming. February 2026, Shenzhen, China. The world's first humanoid robot combat league officially launches, and the prize on the line is a gold belt worth $1.4 million. You heard that right. Not a research grant. Not a government award ceremony. A combat sports prize purse, structured exactly like a professional fighting league, with brackets, bouts, crowds, and cameras. The robots stepping into that arena are Engine AIT 800 units, and what they do in the ring is not the clunky, slow-motion shoving match you might picture when you imagine robots fighting. These machines execute side kicks with snapping speed. They perform 360-degree aerial rotations. They absorb impact, recalculate their center of mass mid-fall, and recover to a fighting stance. Watching it feels less like a robotics demonstration and more like a martial arts film, except nothing is being edited and nothing is being faked. Now here is the detail that elevates this from spectacle to strategy. The Chinese engineers running the Combat League didn't shy away from explaining exactly why they built it. They stated openly on record that combat testing accelerates their development cycles by 30%. Not, "We think it might help." Not, "We're exploring the possibility." 30% faster development. Confirmed. Announced. Published. Think about what that admission tells you. They are not building a fight club because it generates views. They are building a fight club because getting punched is the fastest way to find every weakness in a robot's physical architecture simultaneously. In a single 3-minute bout, you stress test dynamic balance under sudden impact, rapid center of mass recalculation, limb durability under lateral force, reactive movement generation from a standing start, and recovery behavior after destabilization. Every one of those capabilities maps directly onto real-world deployment scenarios that have nothing to do with fighting. A robot that can recover from a kick to the torso in a combat ring can recover from an unexpected collision on a factory floor. A robot that can execute a spinning aerial rotation and land cleanly can navigate an uneven surface without falling. Combat isn't a detour from useful robotics development. For Chinese engineers, it is the most efficient path through it. Now hold that philosophy up against how the West develops robots. Boston Dynamics produces careful, methodical, heavily documented engineering. Their Atlas robot is genuinely extraordinary. But the pace is deliberate years between major public capability demonstrations, development cycles measured in careful increments. The Western approach produces papers, patents, and cautious progress. China built a fight club and called it an R&D accelerator. One approach optimizes for rigor, the other optimizes for speed. And in a race where trajectory matters more than today's position, the difference between those two philosophies is not academic. But the Fight Club was still just one arena. What China built next was big enough to fit 500 robots, 280 teams, and 16 countries inside it. And they called it the Olympics. The Olympics nobody invited you to watch. August 2025, Beijing. The inaugural World Humanoid Robot Games, the world's first Robot Olympics. And the numbers alone tell you this was not a trade show with velvet ropes and press badges. 500 humanoid robots, 280 competing teams, 16 countries, 26 disciplines, 26. Let that sink in for a moment. This wasn't a single capability showcase where engineers wheel out their best machine, have it do one impressive thing, and take a bow. The organizers built an entire competitive framework designed to test everything a humanoid robot can do and then stress tested every dimension of that simultaneously. Boxing, football, tai chi, marathon running, obstacle courses, balance, challenges. Each discipline probing a completely different physical capability profile, each one exposing a different set of weaknesses for every team's engineers to take home and fix. Think about what tai chi demands from a robot. Slow, deliberate, precisely controlled movement, fine motor coordination. Postural balance at low speeds, which is actually harder than it sounds, because slow movement removes the momentum that helps stabilize a moving body. Now think about what boxing demands. Explosive speed, impact absorption, split-second reactive decision-making. These two disciplines require almost opposite physical architectures to execute well. The fact that both were included in the same competition tells you exactly what the organizers were measuring, not whether Chinese robots are good at one thing, but whether they are becoming capable across everything. And here is the geopolitical dimension that most coverage completely missed. 16 countries participated. China organized the event. China hosted it. China wrote the rules, defined the disciplines, set the judging criteria, and fielded the most competitive teams. When you build the Olympics, you also build the definition of what winning looks like. China is not just developing the most capable humanoid robots, it is constructing the international framework that will measure every other country's robots against a standard that Chinese engineers helped design. But the detail that truly signals long-term intent isn't in the August 2025 event itself. It's in what was announced before the closing ceremony was even finished. The second World Humanoid Robot Games is already confirmed for August 2026. This is not a one-time spectacle. This is an institution being built in real time. a permanent, recurring international stage where China gets to demonstrate, year after year, how far ahead its robots have moved since the last time the world watched. You are watching the establishment of a new global benchmark. And the country setting that benchmark is the same one that just posted a 200% improvement in robot running speed in 12 months. Which raises the obvious question, how does a country go from nowhere to everywhere in this industry in under a decade? The answer isn't talent alone. It isn't even technology alone. It's $26 billion and a 5-year plan with national security written all over it. The $26 billion blueprint. Here is the part most viral clips and breathless tech headlines never get to. The skating video is easy to share. The marathon record is easy to celebrate. But the actual engine underneath all 4 of these stories is a funding architecture, so deliberately coordinated that calling it an industry would be underselling it. China has deployed $26 billion in government-coordinated investment into more than 140 robotics companies simultaneously running in parallel, competing against each other, feeding a national capability that no single organization owns, but every organization contributes to. Think about what that structure does that Western venture capital cannot. VC picks likely winners, concentrates resources, and cuts losers early. That produces excellent companies, but maybe a dozen serious experiments at any given time. China's model runs 140 experiments simultaneously. It can afford for 60% to fail completely and still end up with more breakthrough capability than the West's most successful concentrated bet. And the strategic outcome is explicit. China's 2026 to 2030 5-year plan identifies humanoid robotics as a national security priority, the same category as semiconductors and military modernization. When a government puts something in that category, every institution reorients around it. Universities redirect research, manufacturers retool supply chains, military planners start writing procurement specs. The result is now showing up in market research. A London-based research firm ranked 3 Chinese companies as the only first-tier vendors of commercially deployed general-purpose humanoid robots globally. Not in demonstrations, in factories, on floors, doing real work right now. But before you walk away convinced China has already won, there is one voice you need to hear, and what he said should give you genuine pause. The smartest skeptic in the room. His name is Rodney Brooks, and if you don't know who he is, you need to, because his opinion carries more weight than almost anyone else you'll find commenting on this topic online. Brooks co-founded iRobot. He helped build the Roomba. He spent decades at MIT shaping the foundational thinking behind modern mobile robotics. He is not a journalist looking for clicks. He is not a politician looking for a soundbite. He is one of the most credentialed robotics minds alive, and he looked at the World Humanoid Robot Games and called it a publicity stunt. He's not alone in that reading. Go back to the Beijing Half Marathon and look at the actual numbers honestly. Only 38% of the competing robots finished fully autonomously. The rest needed human intervention at some point during the race. Honor's Lightning Robot, the one that posted the record time, crossed the finish line impressively, but other units stumbled, stopped, and had to be guided back on course by handlers walking alongside them. The gap between a controlled demonstration and reliable real-world deployment is enormous. A robot that lands a front flip on a prepared ice surface in a staged video is not the same machine as a robot working a 10-hour shift in a factory with variable lighting, unpredictable obstacles, and zero tolerance for failure. China has not closed that gap. Anyone telling you the robots are already here, already capable, already replacing human workers at scale, they are getting ahead of the evidence. Brooks has been right before, when the rest of the world was too excited to think straight. You owe it to yourself to take his skepticism seriously. But here's what his framework doesn't account for, and this is where the story gets truly uncomfortable. The argument Brooks can't answer. Brooks is right about today. The question is whether he is right about the trajectory, and that distinction is everything. Go back to 3 variables that his skepticism doesn't fully account for: trajectory, investment scale, and the sim-to-real methodology, and look at what they produce when they compound together. Start with trajectory. From 2 hours and 40 minutes to 50 minutes and 26 seconds in 1 year is not normal engineering progress. Normal engineering progress is shaving seconds off a benchmark through careful iteration. What China posted is a 200% improvement in 12 months, a compounding curve, not a linear one. And here is what makes a compounding curve dangerous in a competitive context. The robots that stumbled in April 2025 are already obsolete. The teams that needed handlers on the course went straight back to their simulation pipelines, fed in every failure data point from race day, and ran millions of corrective iterations overnight. The next generation of those robots trained on the previous generation's worst moments. Each failure becomes fuel. Each stumble accelerates the next leap. Now add investment scale. The West has robotics companies, genuinely impressive ones. Boston Dynamics produces machines that move with breathtaking fluidity. Figure AI is building toward real deployment. But the combined research and development expenditure of every serious Western humanoid robotics company does not approach $26 billion in coordinated capital, running 140 parallel experiments simultaneously. When you run that many experiments at once, you encounter solutions that sequential, careful development simply never reaches on the same timeline. You find the edge cases. You stumble into breakthroughs. You generate the kind of dense, diverse failure data that makes the next generation dramatically better than anything a handful of well-funded companies working carefully could produce. And then there is the sim-to-real methodology, the one the skating video made visible. This is the variable that structurally changes the competitive dynamic in a way that funding alone cannot replicate. Because sim-to-real decouples physical hardware from learning time. You do not need a warehouse full of robots falling down to train the next capability. You need a physics simulator and enough compute. The moment an algorithm is perfected in simulation, every robot running that architecture has the capability simultaneously, globally, at zero marginal cost. The West can build one extraordinary robot. China can build one extraordinary algorithm and give it to every robot on Earth by morning. That asymmetry does not show up in today's capability comparison. It shows up in the gap between where China's robots are today and where they will be in 24 months. A gap that the skating video, the marathon record, the Fight Club, and the Robot Olympics are all quietly measuring in real time. The verdict: the skating video was always delivering. China went from no meaningful humanoid robotics industry a decade ago to leading every physical capability metric, every commercial deployment ranking, and every international competitive framework in approximately 10 years. The robots are not perfect. The skeptics are not wrong about the gaps, but perfect was never the threshold that mattered. The threshold that matters is whether the trajectory, the investment scale, and the sim-to-real methodology combine to produce a compounding advantage the West cannot structurally match. And the answer that every skating trick, every marathon record, every Fight Club bout, and every Robot Olympics medal is quietly providing chapter by chapter, month by month is yes. What makes that answer genuinely uncomfortable is that it doesn't require China's robots to be perfect today. It only requires them to be improving faster than anything the West is currently fielding, and on every measurable axis. That is exactly what is happening. The Unitree G1 didn't go viral because it was beautiful on ice. It went viral because watching a $17,990 machine land a front flip and glide with more control than most humans manage in their first hour on skates, you already knew what you were actually watching. You were watching the gap close. And it is closing faster than anyone predicted.